Hare Krishna.
Yes,
So, devotees, we will we'll resume from the 12th chapter. Some portion was covered last week, and this week Syama Kund will cover the next part.
Okay. Let me share my screen. So some of you I'm seeing after a long time here. Harsha Prabhu, thank you for joining. Mahila Mani and Ramesh Prabhu. So let me start my screen. I am going through multiple PPTs, etc. So, Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I'd like to thank all of you for giving me an opportunity to read these texts, and I don't know how much you all will be benefited with it here, but at least it is helping me to be staying connected to Krishna. Thank you for giving me this opportunity here. So we discussed this 12th chapter to some extent. The 12th chapter has effectively 3 sections. So let me come here. So this 12th chapter, let me come back. I'm just doing a revision here. Let's come here. The 3 sections of the 12th chapter are, firstly, in the first few verses, Arjuna asks a question: what is the best path to reach the absolute truth? That's the subject matter of the first few verses. That is where we were discussing last week. And I will recap it. I'll give a review of it again, maybe 5 to 10 minutes max, so that those who were not there last week can also have some preview of it. And then I will continue further about this first section itself to see which are the different options available there. And then Krishna expands on those options further, which is how to go to Godhead. There is an ultimate part, but there are steps towards it. So he speaks about it. If you can do this, great. If you cannot do that, we have something else that you can try. So Krishna himself has given options for us, what those options are. That is the second section. And the third section is, no matter what the options are, there are certain common qualities of all, which we all have to strive for and which serve as a barometer for us to know that are we going on the right path. If we are going on the right path, those qualities will manifest in us effortlessly. If we are not going on the right path, then most likely these qualities will also not manifest. So it is not sufficient for us to know, hey, I am following the right path. We need certain indications, we need certain feedback mechanisms. And those feedback mechanisms come through the medium of these devotees' disposition. Now, saying it in a different way, only when a bhakta or a sadhaka practices or lives his life in the certain disposition, it becomes easy for him to practice. It works both ways. When we practice well, we get those qualities. If we strive for those qualities, we can practice well. It works both ways. It's a little mystical in that sense. We are often accustomed to having a an answer to a question. Did the chicken come first or did the egg come first? But this is one of those chicken and egg problems. We don't know which one comes first, but we have to see it holistically. Okay. So let me come back to this verses here. First verse, just giving it as a recap until the point. We were there till text 5. We went till text 5. So I'll just recap till text 5. So the first verse in the 12th chapter, which Arjuna asked is, Evam satata yukta ye bhaktas tvam paryupasate ye chapi aksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. Arjuna asks, which is considered to be more perfect? Those who are considered to be more perfect, those who are always engaged in your devotional service. What is it here? Satata yukta, always engaged in bhaktaha tvam, in bhakti or devotional service unto you. Tvam means unto you. Paryupasate, upasana means worshipping. Paryupasana is properly worshipping further. Right? Or he gives ye, cha api, or otherwise, aksharam avyaktam. Between these two, what is aksharam? The word avyakta means unmanifest. There is an aspect of the Supreme Lord wherein he is unmanifest. There is also an aspect of the Supreme Lord where he is manifest. There is one where he is aksharam, he is beyond the senses, and one where we can experience him with the senses. Both are possible. Arjuna is asking, which of these two is better? And why did Arjuna ask this question? Arjuna asked this question because in the previous chapter, let me maximize as much as possible. Yeah. The previous chapter, towards the end of the previous chapter, Krishna had shown to Arjuna the universal form, and then Arjuna got very much bewildered by it. He said, this seems to be very frightening for me. And so he said, will you please come back to your original form? And then he first came to his four-handed form, and then he came to his two-handed form. And after seeing the two-handed Shyama Sundara Rupa of Krishna, Arjuna was very much satisfied. Arjuna is an eternal pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. And he has the relationship with the Supreme Lord with this two-handed form. And therefore, he became very happy with it. So at that point in time, Krishna tells Arjuna, Naham veder na tapasa na danena na ijjaya shakya eva vidho drashtum drashtavanasi mam yatha bhaktya tu ananyaya shakya aham vidho Arjuna jnatum drashtum cha tatvena praveshtum cha parantapa. Neither through the Vedas nor through austerities, na veder na tapasa, nor through charities, na dhanena, nor through performance of sacrifice, ijjaya. Is it possible to see me as you have seen me? Only by ananya bhakti, bhaktya tu ananyaya. Only by ananya bhakti it is possible to know me and see me. Aham vedho, Arjuna. Jnatum drashtum cha tatvena praveshtum cha parantapa. One can know about Krishna, jnatum. One can see Krishna only through bhakti ananyaya. Ananya bhakti means there is no other person here other than Krishna as the ultimate recipient of our love and affection. What does that mean? Let me just stay on to that for a little while. Ananya here means we see everything in relation to Krishna. There will be other devatas, there will be other human beings, there will be relatives, there will be friends, but everybody is seen through the prism that they are part and parcel of Krishna. Right? That is, in other words, they all have a relationship with Krishna. By satisfying this one Krishna, everybody else will also be satisfied, and vice versa. If we try to satisfy others, it should be such that their relationship with Krishna is enhanced. This is this Ananya Bhakti, that ultimately Krishna is the person to be pleased. So the Bhagavad Gita, through all the chapters so far, has come to the stage of telling Ananya Bhakti to Krishna. And Krishna is saying, Aham. He is saying very clearly. He is not saying Ananya Bhakti to the soul. Because if that were to be the soul to the Atma, which means he wouldn't talk about himself. He would talk about a neutral gender there, right? So having said this, he basically instigated Arjuna further, saying, it is only this path of bhakti through which you can reach me. And then he also says, mat karma krit mat paramo mat bhakta sangavarjitaha nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yahasa mameti pandava. Mat karma krit, one who works for me. Mat paramo, one who holds me as a supreme. Mat bhaktaha, one who is devoted to me. Sangavarjitaha, he is devoid of all unnecessary attachments with the material world, with material conceptions, with some other conceptions which do not engender this bhakti. Okay? Nirvairaha, devoid of hatred for any living entity. Sarva bhuteshu, there is no hatred for any living entity. Such a person attains me, O Pandava, O Arjuna. So, with this as a background, Arjuna has asked this question. Who are the best knowers of her? Evam satata yuktaye bhaktas tvam paryupasate. There are some who are bhaktas and some who worship the unmanifest form of the Supreme Lord. Which of these are better? And in response to this, Krishna says, Shri Bhagavan uvacha maya vesha mano ye mam nitya yukta upasate shraddhaya parayo petas te me yukta tamamataha. He said, those mayi avesha mano ye, those who are absorbed in me, those who worship me, nitya yukta upasate. Upasana is worship. They constantly, nitya, they worship me being absorbed in me. Mayi avesha mano. Their mind is filled with me, constantly absorbing their minds in me. And then he says, Shraddhaya parayo petas te me yukta tamamataha. They are the best. So between the person who worships or the person who tries to access the unmanifest form of the Supreme Lord and the manifest form, he says this manifest form is better. Why are we talking about it? We in India typically hear a lot about we all have to worship the absolute truth and become one with the absolute truth. Is this true? No. It is a proclivity of some of the people in this world or some of the jivas in this world, but it is not so for all. And this proclivity is not even encouraged. It is like saying a child by default likes to play, but a child just by playing alone, it is not helping the child to grow up and function in the society well. The child has to learn some things in this world. So all play and no work makes Jack a dull boy. The famous phrase. In the same way, people may have certain tendencies, but just because one person has a tendency, it doesn't mean that is the best thing that to have happen for that person in this world. Is it really so? Is it just that I am telling, or is it the scriptures themselves tell? So let us go through the scriptures now. Here in this verse, Krishna said, Shraddhaya parayo petas. He said, with their faith beyond the gunas, they are associating with me constantly by constant mayi avisha, with their minds fully focused on me. What is this Shraddha as per the scriptures here? In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Satviki Adhyatmiki Shraddha Karma Shraddha tu Rajasi Tamasi Adharmeya Shraddha Mat Sevayam tu Nirguna. The faith that we all have is of different kinds. Faith, which is in the mode of goodness. We will define in the chapters to come what is the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness, there is something called the Sattva Guna means mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, one has faith in Adhyatma or spiritual life. In the mode of passion, one has Karma Shraddha. That is the Rajas Guna. The mode of passion is called in Sanskrit as the Rajas Guna. In that, one has faith in Karma Shraddha. I do something and I get some result out of it. If I can't see some result out of it, I don't have faith in it. Like, say, for example, some of us were hearing the Ramayana yesterday, and even in the previous week, we heard the classic example of Shabari, who for almost 12 plus years, she was just waiting for Lord Ramachandra to come to the ashram. Her guru, her attachment was not even so much to Ramachandra. Her attachment was to her spiritual master. She liked them very much. And her spiritual masters, like Matanga Rishi and others, they told her that we are getting old, we have to leave our body, and we are going to the spiritual world. But Lord Ramachandra, he is in Chitrakoot. And from Chitrakoot, he will come here south. So Chitrakoot is like right now in Madhya Pradesh, border of Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, and where Shabari was staying was near the Pampa Sarovar, which is near Hampi in Karnataka, like it's near the Bellary district of Karnataka. Somehow these sages knew by their divine vision. And they said, I cannot stay here further because my body is old. You please stay here and keep this ashram ready for the appearance of Lord Ramachandra. And for 12 years, an old lady alone in the ashram was cleaning the ashram, bringing flowers, bringing fruits, thinking, today Lord Ramachandra will come, today Lakshmana will come, and I will serve them because my guru has asked them to serve. Every day, day after day, with consciousness fully with this, following this instruction. But did it manifest on that day? No. Did it manifest the second day? No. 12 into 365, almost, 7,000 days or so. Continuously she did this, and she didn't lose her enthusiasm. But those who do not have, this is called the Adhyatma Shraddha. But there is a Karma Shraddha where one expects that my result, I can say I have to see today or tomorrow or day after tomorrow. One does not have the patience to see it for 7,000 plus days. And likewise, when we chant the holy name, this is the same Adhyatma Shraddha, like Shabari, that we need to have. That this will manifest one day in its complete aspect. The Nama, the holy name of Krishna itself, will give us access to the form of the Supreme Lord, which is called the Rupa. It will also give us access to the Guna, the qualities of the Supreme Lord. Then we will get to engage in the Leela, or the activities of the Supreme Lord, just by the chanting of the holy name. That is the Satviki Adhyatma Shraddha. Whereas the Karma Shraddha is, I work something and I get immediate results. Why is it that the Satviki Shraddha is put on a higher pedestal than this Karma Shraddha? I mean, of course, there is not just Satviki Shraddha, there is a Shuddha Satviki Shraddha. The Shuddha Satviki Shraddha is what is Mat Sevayam Tu. That is the Shuddha Sattva Shraddha. And Krishna says, faith in my devotional service is transcendental. So what Shabari had, or the faith that we can have for the holy name, is in the mode of pure goodness, or it is also called transcendental goodness. And that is that kind of Shraddha. And why is it put at a higher pedestal? It is put at a higher pedestal because when we go to this transcendental mode, then we don't get into a transactional relationship with the Supreme Lord. As long as we have a transactional relationship with the Supreme Lord, we are still in within this world. It's like profit and loss statement. But when we come out of this material world, we are not interested in profit and loss. Why? Because we know we are the spirit soul. We are eternally the spirit soul, and we live eternally. There is no loss for us at any point in time. There is nothing that can cut us. There is nothing that can kill us, which means we are no longer limited by this notion called time. In this world, we always, in a very subtle form, we think, I am limited by time. I have only so much time to live. And because I have only so much time to live, I have to enjoy as much as possible within this time. If I don't do it, then I would have lost everything. This non-eternal conception of our own selves is where we get the problem. Okay, I just saw this message here. Ashok Bhanuvikran Prabhu said that Shabarimala is in Kerala.
Yes.
So what's happening here is this. The word Pampa Sarovara is, there is a Pampa Sarovara in Karnataka currently here, and there is also a Pampa in Kerala. So when Lord Ramachandra came here, it is after seeing Shabari that he met Hanuman and Kishkin and Sugriva and others and entered the Kishkinda Kingdom. So the Kishkinda, the current day Hampi, is what is called as the Kishkinda Kingdom. So there is a Pampa Sarovar even there, and there are multiple Pampa Sarovars being spoken about. So there is a Pampa Sarovar in Kerala, there is a Pampa Sarovar in Karnataka. Those in Kerala would see, hey, no, it is here. And some would say no, because the Kishkinda Kingdom was the first one to be seen, and then only Lord Ramachandra came down further to Rameshwaram and then crossed the Lanka. So the Pampa Sarovar in it's called the Koppal district in Karnataka. That is where Shabari was present. So these are the diverging views here, and we all need to know that this pastime of Lord Ramachandra happened 17 million years ago. So many changes can happen. Maybe that same Pampa Sarovar was flowing all the way from Karnataka to Kerala too, and then the course of rivers change. Some go underground and they come up again. Don't know how things happen here. Is it okay, Ashok Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, and this Jadayu rock is there, and now there is a very good Jadayu stupa is done, and it is the biggest in the world.
Yeah, that was recently constructed. Yeah.
Yes, he is my friend, Rajiv, sculptor.
Okay. Yes. Nice to hear.
Okay.
So coming back to this. This particular verse, we came to this verse because we are going word by word into there are some important phrases in this chapter which we need to know carefully. The Shraddha that Krishna is telling here is a transcendental Shraddha. There is the Shraddha in the mode of goodness, which is directed towards spiritual life. There's a Shraddha on fruitive work in the mode of passion. And Tamasi Adharme, there's faith in irreligious activities. That Krishna distinguishes as Shraddha Mat Sevayam to Nirguna. And he says this is Nirguna means beyond the modes of material nature. And that Shraddha is Mat Sevaya, faith in serving Krishna. So he makes it very clear. This is the one which is transcendental. Right? This is in the 11th chapter, 11th canto, 25th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Krishna says, in reply to Arjuna's question, Yetu aksharam anirdeshyam avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gam achintyam cha kutastam achalam dhruvam sanniyamyendriya gramam sarvatra samabuddhaya te praptavanti mameva sarvabhuta hite rathaha. So we discussed this too last week. Those who worship the unnamed, formless entity, all pervading in space and time, inconceivable, the unchanging eternal Brahman, completely subduing their senses, looking on all things equally and intent on the welfare of all, they too attain me alone. But then comes the qualifying statement which Krishna says in the following verse. Klesho adhikatarastesham avyakta asakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkam dehavadbhir avapyate. He says certain aspects. There are those who go to the avyakta. Avyakta means unmanifest. Pardon me. So the avyakta, the unmanifest aspect of the Supreme Lord, Krishna says, kleshaha. Anybody who is attached to this impersonal realization, he encounters klesho adhikatara, extreme difficulties. And then he says, anybody who follows in this path, who follows, they have a bir. For all of us who are embodied, if we follow this path, it only leads to dukkham. It's a lot of suffering. Why? For those who are on the embodied, like we who have this body, we are souls, we have this body. And just a minute. When we who are embodied try to access that aspect of the Supreme Lord which is formless, it is very unnatural for us in our current condition. And therefore it causes suffering to us. What kind of suffering it causes? It causes suffering at the bodily level. It also causes suffering at the subconscious level. How does it cause suffering at the bodily and the subconscious level? If one has to access this unmanifest, one has to focus one's mind on something which is totally formless. And that is very tough. That is also okay. Many people try it here. Many people go to the yoga studios or they go to some yoga camp. They try to keep their mind free of thoughts. They try for some time, and after some time, they come back to the state where they are full of thoughts. But okay, at least for some few minutes or few seconds, they're able to do it. But the subconscious problem is even greater. The subconscious problem is that because they are trying to access the Lord without the form, they are so much with the conception that the Supreme Lord does not have a form. He does not have qualities, nirguna. He does not have beautiful features. They try to negate the good things of this world. And as a result, between in interpersonal relationships with each other, they tend to have a problem. They cannot have a proper one-to-one relationship with each other in the phase when they are practicing. And therefore, it often leads to having cold feelings towards each other. So families become dysfunctional, relationship with children, relationship with relatives become dysfunctional, etc. All in the name of spiritual growth. And therefore, it becomes that a whole generation of people get disillusioned with spirituality. Because this person is practicing spirituality in this way, we are not getting the love we want. We will not even get into the spiritual world. We would rather want to have our vyavaharika jivana, our material world as it is. That is this dukkham that comes about. Dukkham at various levels that comes about. Okay. Then, last week, in order to understand what is this klesho adhikataras, this path is very difficult. We went through this list of, this is the list of items that a person who is following the path of impersonal realization, avyakta, one who wants to attain the avyakta, how he has to go through. This is from Sripada Shankaracharya's Sadhana Panchakam. Okay. So we talked about how there is the daily study of Vedas. One has to do first purify oneself to come to the stage of focusing on the absolute truth, who has no form. So in the impersonal path, it is not that any Tom, Dick and Harry can go and focus on the unmanifest form. First, one has to purify by doing Deva Yajna, Pitri Yajna, Manushya Yajna, Bhuta Yajna. So for different devatas, one has to do yajnas. For the forefathers, one has to do the yajna. One has to do something for mankind. One has to do something for nature, bhuta. Then when one becomes purified of that, one should also do the Vedic karmas as prescribed. And then one has to even do prayashchitta or repentance for things which one couldn't perform properly. And then one should also worship the Supreme Lord. And herein comes the important aspect. Even a person who wants to practice, who wants to access the unmanifest form of the Supreme Lord, he cannot even experience that without worshipping the Supreme Lord. So there is some amount of bhakti required even for accessing the impersonal aspect of the Supreme Lord. It's anyway required for accessing the personal aspect, but even the impersonal aspect, the unmanifest form, the nirguna feature, even for that one needs bhakti. And then one has to continuously reflect on the futility of pleasure, and one is ready, at least internally, one has to detach oneself from one's family, and this is called, in quotes, leave the house. And after that, one cultivates association of like-minded sadhus, and then one has to cultivate qualities like discrimination, detachment, vairagya, eagerness to know more, mumuksha, control of the senses, etc., shamadama, etc. And then one has to observe oneself continuously, that am I performing an activity to satisfy what I want or not? So if it is coming from my desire, I have to give up those desire-based activities. So this is a tough part. So the ones in red are the very tough part. And then one has to assimilate the Mahavakyas, which Sripada Shankaracharya has given. And abide in what are the Mahavakyas? Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, etc. So assimilate it completely. And after doing all of this, one has to again think carefully. Am I still having pride? Am I having an argumentative mentality? Am I identifying myself with saying, only if my body is happy, I'll be happy? So give up all of that. Just be satisfied with food which is given as medicine, but not for taste. Never speak anything more than required. And then one comes to the stage of focusing the mind on Brahman. After all of this, one comes to the final stage here of sadhana. And then one has to see the Atma everywhere. So here it's still not the ultimate Atma. It's just one's Atma one has to see everywhere. This is the beginning stage of impersonal realization. So as you see here, it is so tough to follow in this world. One has to go to solitude. We cannot function in this world. We have to go to a lonely place like a forest or something like that, and then practice all of this. So that is the klesho adhikataraha. So we stopped here at this point in time, seeing the focus of the previous week's session was primarily that there is the path of impersonal realization. And number two, it is that certain jivas have the proclivity for it. And just like the Supreme Lord has given us this material world so that we can enjoy independent of him, he also allows jivas who want to experience this unmanifest aspect of Krishna. Krishna is Purna, Purnata. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. He is complete, Purna. And because he is complete, he should have the personal aspect and the impersonal aspect. Because if he has one and if he doesn't have the other, it means he's incomplete. But Krishna is saying, my completeness is in the personal aspect. The impersonal aspect or the unmanifest form is not the complete one. That is what he's been telling in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Bhagavad Gita, etc., multiple times. But there are people in this world who like this unmanifest aspect, for whatever be the reason. And therefore, Krishna is so kind that he even gives them acharyas who can teach them how to approach it. But there's a very famous verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam which says, Aruhya kricham param padam patanti adaha. Those who go on this impersonal aspect, Aruhya kricham, just like klesho adhikatara, with great difficulty, they climb up this path of impersonal realization. Patanti adaha, they fall down again. Why? Because this impersonal aspect is not a complete aspect. They cannot be satisfied with the impersonal aspect of the Supreme Lord. So one has to either fall down and come back to materialism, or with divine grace, one has to migrate oneself to worshipping the personal form of the Supreme Lord. And for this, last week we discussed the example of the Shankaracharya of Kanchi. His name was Chandrasekharendra Saraswati, who in his last days, he was the ardent follower of impersonalism, but in his last days, he developed an attraction to worshipping Krishna's personal form. And he said, I want to go to Govardhan and circumambulate the Govardhan hill. So he expressed that wish because many times after practicing impersonalism with the mercy of the Supreme Lord, one can develop an attraction for the personal aspect. So, having said that, klesho adhikatarastesham, I want to just focus a little bit on this avyakta aspect too, especially from the standpoint of the Mahavakyas. So, what is one of the Mahavakyas? I mean, discussing on all the Mahavakyas will take some time, but I just want to take one Mahavakya. These Mahavakyas are certain statements from the Upanishads, which Sripada Shankaracharya says, oh, these statements are the ultimate essence of all scriptures. That is the view of Sripada Shankaracharya. Has it been accepted by every other Acharya? No. Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the very incarnation of the Supreme Lord, they do not accept it. Why? Because the Upanishads are a component of the Vedic literature. And in that, there are certain statements. And the Upanishads are like what we call as conference papers. So those who are used to the academic world know that there is something called as journal paper. There is something called as a tutorial paper, or tutorial overview, and there is something called as a conference paper. A conference paper will focus on one small aspect, one small topic. A journal paper will typically take 2-3 topics together and try to bring about a unified understanding of those topics. And a tutorial topic will take several journal papers and give the overall summary of that field. So Upanishads are like these journal papers. Now, all the content of these Upanishads across different Upanishads is strung together in the Brahma Sutras. Now, for this Brahma Sutra, since it takes all these contents of Upanishads together, but what about the different Puranas, the Itihasas, etc.? Putting all of that together is what's given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is why it is said by Vyasadeva that in his maturity, he himself acknowledges that he was dissatisfied with what he did in compiling the Vedas. He was dissatisfied with what he did in the, what he composed in the Brahma Sutras. And finally, he became happy by writing the Srimad Bhagavatam, because that put together all the concepts which are there, which is required for us to know what is the absolute truth and to practice it properly. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's very, very, very clearly stated that the Etechamsha Kala Pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. There are different manifestations of the Supreme Lord. Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. This is the statement which establishes the supremacy of Krishna. And then following, or actually it was a little preceding this statement here in the previous chapter, the path of worshipping and rendering devotional service to Krishna is the ultimate. Savay pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adokshaje ahetuki aprati hata yatma suprasidati. This is the statement which Srila Vyasadeva effectively states. Actually, it was told by Suta Goswami, but since it's composed by Vyasadeva, we can say Vyasadeva is telling Savaya pumsam paro dharmo. Oh, human beings, the paro dharma, the ultimate dharma is Yatho bhaktir adokshaje. Adokshaja is the Supreme Lord. Unto the Supreme Lord, Yatho bhaktir. Similar to what is given in the Bhagavad Gita. And by doing so, what happens? Ye yatma suprasidati. The soul becomes happy. So these statements which Sripada Shankaracharya has taken, the other acharyas would say, no, you are taking bits and pieces here, and even your interpretation is wrong. So let's consider one such statement. What do both of them say? That is the Vaishnava acharyas and Sripada Shankaracharya. So let's take one of the statement called Tat Tvam Asi. This Tat Tvam Asi actually comes in one of the Upanishads called the Chandogya Upanishad. There is a sage called Uddalaka. In one of our morning sessions, we discussed about the life of Uddalaka Aruni, etc. And this Uddalaka had a son by the name Shvetaketu. So Uddalaka sent his son to study the Vedas from another teacher. So in the olden days, nobody would teach their child on their own fully. At least for some time, they would send it to another teacher, and then they'll come back and teach additional items. Even if a person is well qualified as a teacher, they would make the child go to some other Gurukula and be trained in discipline. Like most of you are quite elderly, you would all know that children do not learn discipline as much from their parents as they learn from other teachers. That's just the way it works. And that's why the Gurukula system was send a child to a Gurukula so that they learn discipline from others. There is always the strand or the thick rope of affection between a parent and a child. So disciplining a child becomes very tough for parents. That's a well-known worldly thing. So Uddalaka sent his son Shvetaketu for learning the essence of the Vedic scriptures. And then when he returned from the Gurukula, Uddalaka questioned. It was like a viva that you have in some examinations. He had a direct external viva as what we have in some of our examinations. He asked his son, can you tell me what is that one principle by knowing which everything else is known? So when Shvetaketu had come, he was a bookish person. He had learned different verses from the Vedas, etc., but he had not assimilated the essence. And it is not easy to do that. So Shvetaketu was dumbstruck at this question. In fact, if any of you here were to be asked this question, at least from whatever we have discussed so far, you would say, the ultimate reality is the Supreme Lord. By knowing him, we will be able to know everything else. But then here is one Shvetaketu who is supposed to be a very intelligent person who does not know the answer to this. And you all may be wondering, we are just some product of Kali Yuga people. For the entire life, we didn't learn the Vedic scriptures properly. Somehow in our middle age or old age, we are trying to learn a little bit here and there. We know so much by hardly hearing 1 hour of classes on some weekdays, weekends, and 15 minutes during weekdays. We know so much more, but this Shvetaketu, he had gone to Gurukula, some 6 to 12 years he had spent in Gurukula, and still he did not know. How is it possible? Right? It is possible because we are the Kali Yuga special mercy candidates. Because we cannot work for 6 years, 12 years, etc., the Acharyas have come and simplified everything for us, and we get to know the essence sooner. We don't live long lifespans like how it used to happen in the Treta Yuga or Dwapara Yuga. We live for a very short period of time. And therefore, Krishna, recognizing that, has sent Acharyas who have given us the essence. And it is by the mercy of such Acharyas like Srila Prabhupada and his predecessor Acharyas that we, with having spent very less time even in understanding the scriptures, not even reading all the scriptures, we have the, at least theoretically, we know the essence, which people like Shvetaketu even didn't know theoretically. So when Shvetaketu did not know this aspect here, this question that his father asked, his father explained. Maybe I couldn't write it I couldn't copy paste the Sanskrit onto the screen. I'm sorry about it because I didn't have time. I'm sorry. But let me just read it here. Yatha soumyekena mritpindena sarvam mrinmayam vijnatam syat. He says, O Soumya, O soft-hearted young boy, in Tamil, there is a word called pinj, or in Malayalam also it's called a pinj, that is immature. So Soumya can also mean an immature young boy. Yatha, O Soumya, ekena mritpindena sarvam mrinmayam vijnatam syat. Just like knowing one small, you take one lump of clay, you will know about all the properties of the complete clay. If you want to know about clay, you don't need to take the clay from an entire some 100 acres of land. We can take one handful of clay and we can get to know about the properties of the clay from one handful of clay. In the same way, Yatha somya ekena lohamanina sarvam lohamayam vijñatam syat. If you take one piece of gold or one small particle of gold, we can know about one big, like nugget of gold, or, the gold biscuit, or some gold ingot, etc. In the same way, just by knowing that one Brahman, one can know everything. So it is the knowledge of that Brahman by knowing which you can know everything here. And then he says, there is this very famous statement here. After saying all of this, O Shvetaketu Tat Tvam Asi. So here, what do people typically think? So the Tat here refers to Brahman. Tvam is you. Asi, you are that Brahman. That is what is being described. But there's a very famous. Okay, before I come to that, I'll tell you here. There's a fundamental principle in understanding the Vedic scriptures. We cannot understand a principle just by one statement. We'll have to see the full context. What is the context here? The context here was, there is something called as the individual particle of gold, and there is a big gold. The individual particle of gold exists, the agglomeration of all these individual particles of gold to form one gold ingot or a gold biscuit or gold coin, etc. That also exists. But the particle here has the same property, but the gold ingot is a collection of several such particles. So therefore, it is equal in quality, but not in quantity. So the particle and the gold ingot or the gold biscuit, they are separate in quantity, but similar in quality. That is what is being spoken. So what the Vaishnava Acharyas say, there are several levels of reason interpretations here, all of which are right. The first level of interpretation that comes up here is, number one, just like a gold particle is similar in quality to the gold ingot, in a similar way, you are similar in quality to Brahman. So therefore, do not be sad with what happens with things in the world, or be too elated with what happens with things in this world. This is the material world. You are spiritual in nature. Just like the Brahman is spiritual in nature, you are spiritual in nature. That is the meaning of Tat Tvam Asi. Whereas the impersonal understanding here is, you are Brahman. You are equal to Brahman, both qualitatively and quantitatively. The Vaishnava Acharyas say, the context here itself clearly mentions you are in quality one, but quantitatively it is different. Why are you unnecessarily bringing this quantity aspect here? Right? So, this is how the two different streams of thought, the impersonal school and the personal school, understand this. And it is not that it is happening now in Kali Yuga. During Krishna's time, and even before that, there was this impersonal school of thought. That is why Arjuna has asked this question, Avyakta Asakta Chetasam. Some people, they very much like this, they asakta, they very much like to be one with the absolute truth. Although it is not permanent, they don't bother about it. They get a certain feeling that I want to escape the duality of this world. So for such people is where Krishna is saying, it is very tough. That path is very tough. First of all, it is not the right aspiration. And because it is not the right aspiration, the path itself is tough. Now, let me come here. And why is it tough here? In the commentary to these verses here, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, those who are attracted to only Brahman, Avyakta Asakta Chetasa, who desire only realization of Brahman, undergo excessive difficulties in attaining it. This much we have discussed so far. Because by what means at all can something without qualities be made manifest? That goal is attained by the jivas endowed with bodies, dehavat bihi, only by undergoing suffering, dukkham. This also we discussed. The senses have the power for particular knowledge. Okay. But stopping of the senses is necessary for those who desire knowledge of the impersonal. How? Like, for example, the natural aspect of a river is to flow to the ocean. But then, if you are trying to stop the rivers, it is huge. It is a huge problem. So the senses are naturally trying to reach the sense objects. And the path of impersonal realization is you stop the senses from going to the sense objects. And therefore it is tough. How does bhakti make it any different? In bhakti, the senses reach the sense objects, but we try to use the sense objects and the senses in service of the Supreme Lord. We don't artificially stop the flow of the senses towards sense objects. Or in other words, my eyes see something that is beautiful. Do I try to stop making something beautiful? No. The sense, that is the eye, sees a sense beautiful object. And what do we try to do? How can this beautiful object, this, say, some table, some chair, or some wood, etc., can be used in the service of the Supreme Lord? That is the differentiating factor between the impersonal path and the personal path. I took a lot of time today just to speak about this here, because people often feel it remains deep within their heart, especially for Indians. You're talking always about bhakti, those who are the followers of Prabhupada, those who are followers of ISKCON. But I think that path is also right. I think I should follow that path. And I spent a lot of time, yes, the previous session and this session here, only for this purpose, that this is a very, the path of impersonal realization is not ultimate, neither is it ultimate, and nor is it natural. It is not the ultimate, it is an unnatural path for a jiva here. So we need to be convinced about this aspect thoroughly. Otherwise, we will not be able to practice the path of bhakti carefully. That's the reason for me to spend so much time on these verses here. Now, so this is from this commentary here, but are there any other scriptures which talk about it likewise? Yes. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the essence of all the Vedic scriptures, there is a particular pastime where there are the four Kumaras: Sanat Kumara, Sanaka Kumara, Sanatana, Sanandana. These four Kumaras, they come to the court of Maharaja Prithu and they teach Maharaj Prithu. Maharaj Prithu himself is actually an avatar, but this is the Leela here. We'll come to these pastimes after completing the Bhagavad Gita. In that, the four Kumaras, they were the ones who had intense attraction to the impersonal aspect of the Supreme Lord at one point in time. And then what happened? They got a smell of the tulasi leaf which was there, which was there from the garland of Lord Vishnu. And just by smelling the aroma of the tulsi leaf, they felt, all along I was trying to focus on the unmanifest absolute truth, but with this I am getting an attraction to the qualities, the form and the nature of the Supreme Lord. So they became Bhakti Yogis. And after becoming the Bhakti Yogi, they spoke this verse to Maharaj Prithu. What did they say? Yat pada pankaja palasha vilasha bhaktya karma shayam gratitam udgratayanti santaha tadvan narikta matayo yatayo piruddha shrotro ganastamaranam bhajavasu devam. 1 minute here. Okay. We are saying the devotees who are always engaged in the service of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. Yet pada pankaja palasha. They are engaged in the service not of the Supreme Lord also, the toes of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. They can very easily overcome the hard-knotted desire for fruitive activities. Because this is very difficult, the non-devotees. And who are the non-devotees? Karmashayam gratam udgratayanti santaha. The jnanis and the yogis, although they are trying to stop the waves of sense gratification, cannot do so. And he says, therefore, O Maharaj Prithu, you are advised to engage in the devotional service of Bhaja Vasudevam. Engage in the devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. And then further, they say, Krichro mahaniha bhavarnam aplavesham sadvarganakram asukhena titirshanti tatvam harer bhagavato bhajaniya mangrim kritvodupam vyasanam uttara dustararnam. They say, this ocean of nescience is very difficult to cross because it is infested with many dangerous sharks. This ocean of nescience is difficult to cross because it is infested with dangerous sharks. And what are these sharks? These sharks are the notions of impersonal absolute truth, that I can come out of this ocean through this worship of the absolute through the impersonal aspect, or just by me doing certain activities in this world, I will get liberated, etc. And so the four Kumaras say, although those who are non-devotees undergo severe austerities and penances to cross that ocean, we recommend that you simply take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Tattvam harer bhagavato bhajaniya mangrim. You do the bhajana of Hari, of Bhagavan Hari, right? Which are like boats for crossing the ocean. There are these deep sharks which will come and which can come and carry us anyways. But you be in the shelter of the boat, then the shark cannot come inside this boat. And they say, although this ocean is difficult to cross, but taking shelter of his lotus feet, you will overcome all dangers. This is the recommended path that is given for us. And for those who say the Supreme Lord is Avyakta, the same verse, the Tattvamasi, we are supposed to be one with the absolute truth. Does it gel well with the rest of the Vedic literature? No. Forget even the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let us go with the Upanishads itself. In the Shvetashvatra Upanishad, it is said, Tva suparna sayuja sakhaya samanam vraksham parisasvajate tayoranya pippalam swadyati anashnan anyo abhichakshiti. It says there are two companion birds sitting together in the same pippala tree. One of them is relishing the taste of the tree's berries, while the other refrains from eating and instead watches over his friend. And in the Shvetashvatra Upanishad, it is said, this is how the Jiva and the Paramatma are there within this body. In our own body, one of it is Jiva. I am trying to enjoy whatever is there in this world. And there is the other bird here, which refrains from eating and instead watches over his friend. That is the Paramatma. So there is a Jivatma and there is a Paramatma. So when this duality is existing here, where is the notion of being one, merging with one? This doesn't exist. So either from the standpoint of the Bhagavatam, which is the summum bonum of all the scriptures, or from the standpoint of even the Upanishads, this aspect of becoming one with the absolute truth is not encouraged here. Okay. Before I come to this here, this portion we discussed last time, but then it's 7:5. Let me come here. Just a minute. So little we discussed about Aham Brahmasmi and Tattvamasi, and we talked about how Krishna says the pure devotees of Krishna are the most perfect in yoga, and the impersonalists are inferior because it's a very troublesome path for them. And in contrast, it is the link path of bhakti is easy, and they are not going to the highest fulfillment that a jiva can get. Okay. So then Krishna says, for the path of bhakti, Ye tu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha anyanyena eva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate tesham aham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavami nachirat partha mai aveshita chetasam. So Krishna is telling in verse number 6 and 7 here, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So in the path of bhakti, it is Krishna who personally comes and helps us. This is because we are trying to engage in the relationship with Krishna. Krishna will come. He is not a cold-hearted person. He is not like, the bourgeois, as they call in French. Somebody who thinks I am greater, the rest of them are the laissez-faire. They are the masses. I am a class apart. I don't have anything to do with them. Such a thing happens in the material world, where people who are very rich, they tend to not associate themselves with poor people. But Krishna is not like that. Anybody who shows a little interest, he comes to them and delivers them from the ocean of birth and death to give them his own world where there is no fear, there is no anxiety. Therefore, Krishna says in text 8, Mai eva mana adatsva, mai buddhim niveshaya, nivasyashisi mayeva, ata urdhvam na samshayaha. Na samshaya, don't have any doubt. Just fix your mind upon me. Mai eva, mai, unto me. Mana adatsva. Fix your mind upon me. Mai buddhim niveshaya. You engage your intelligence in me. And thus, nivastishyasi mayeva. You will live with me. When we are focused on Krishna, we will live with him. And here is where Krishna starts that the different paths and the different levels of bhakti is what he gives. So what he's talking here in verses 8 and 9, Krishna is talking about bhakti with one's internal senses. For somebody, what is the internal sense? It is the mind and the intelligence are the internal senses. Somebody who can do that, he tells, please go on this path. But if somebody cannot do it, in the next verse 10, he talks about bhakti practiced using external senses. And if somebody cannot do even that, he talks in verse 11 about giving up the results of work. And this is the hierarchy that's coming up here. So we'll go through this. It's 7-8. Give me 5-10 minutes and then we'll pause for questions. So the first one, the bhakti with the internal senses. It's also called Smaranatmika Bhakti. So, Mai eva mana adatsva. Fix your mind on me. And then another component is fix your buddhi. Mai buddhim niveshaya. Fix your intelligence in me. What is the meaning of fixing one's mind on me? Fixing the mind means fixing one's desires. It is the mind which is the seat of one's desires. So therefore, Krishna is telling, desire for me. But how can I have desire for you? We can have desire for Krishna only when we get to know the pastimes that Krishna engages in and whatever he has spoken about himself and others, somewhere or the other. So that is why it is very important that to fix one's mind on Krishna, one has to hear Krishna Katha. So the process of hearing in Bhakti, hearing is very important. We hear about Krishna Katha, about the Katha of Krishna's devotees, about the Katha of Krishna's different incarnations, and that of teachings of Krishna, so that our mind can be fixed on Krishna. Our desire, we develop a desire for Krishna. That is this mana adatsva. If we are fixing our desire on Krishna, what is this buddhim niveshaya? When one has a desire to be in a relationship with somebody, one starts making plans how to live in that relationship. That is the use of the intelligence. That is called fixing one's intelligence. When one has desire to be in relationship with Krishna, how to act in the relationship and coming up with plans and executing it is this buddhim niveshaya. And part of this intelligence is that if I have something else to do other than being engaged in service to Krishna, then the buddhi will say, no, let's focus on this. So this focusing aspect also comes in buddhim. But then we may say, no, sometimes I can do it, but all the time I cannot do it. That is why Krishna comes in, gives a solution. The next verse. Ata chittam samadhatum na shaknosi mai stiram abhyasa yogena tato mam ichaptum dhananjaya. Krishna says, na shaknosi, if it is not possible, mai, to focus your mind, your chitta, consciousness, mai, on me, stiram, in a very dedicated or a fixed way, continuous way, then what to do? Abhyasa yogena tato. You practice abhyasa. By practice, the mind will go away here and there. Bring it back to me. And this is what you, me, all of us are trying through the process of chanting the holy name of Krishna. We spend, maybe some of us chant 1 round for 5 minutes, some of us chant 16 rounds, maybe 1.5 to 2 hours. And in this 1.5 to 2 hours, we are trying to bring our mind to Krishna. So we are not at the highest level. We acknowledge it. Fixing our mind always on Krishna, we are not at that level. Fixing our intelligence in Krishna fully, not possible. So some 1 hour, 2 hours, or whatever, 5 minutes, half an hour in a day, we are trying to do this Abhyasa Yoga. But what Krishna is telling, do Abhyasa throughout the day. But what are we doing? Some 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, like that we are trying to do here. So this Abhyasa Yoga, either through chanting or through hearing, is what we are trying to do. But then even this becomes problem for some of us. What is the problem? Abhyasye api asamarthosi. It is easy to do this Abhyasa Yoga if one is simple in heart. But sometimes it becomes very tough. Why does it become very tough? We'll say, I have such a big family to maintain. Who is going to make money for the family? And who is going to pay money, foot all the bills there? And there are so many relatives. They all are expecting something from me here. It's not like I am a renowned sannyasi or something where I am not answerable to anybody in this world. So there is in one sense the burden of the world around us. Some of us feel it that way. So then Krishna says, Abhyase api asamartosi. If we cannot do Abhyasa fully, we are very much attached to doing work in this world. We feel that things will run in this world only when I do the work. Okay. That is the stage where we are in, mat karma paramo bhava. He says, let me come here. If you cannot fix your mind upon me, then without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. And if you cannot even practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, just try to work for me. How to work for Krishna? The Acharyas, which will come in the slides further also, we'll explain that. They say one of the ways to work for Krishna is build a temple for Krishna, or clean the temple for Krishna, or at home, do worship of the deities at home, offer something to Krishna. So we are doing activities for Krishna, and through that, gradually we will come for the mind there. But even if that is not possible, we say, no, I don't have even time to clean the temple for Krishna, or make a flower garland for Krishna, or carry his pallaki, or the palanquin during his utsava or festivals, etc. I don't even have time for that. I don't have energy for that. I am too old for that. There may be n number of reasons. Then Krishna says, Madartam api karmani kuruvan siddhim avapsyasi. He says, dedicate the result of the fruit of the fruit of the activities. That I work something, I'll take some part, and some part I give it to Krishna. So he gives step by step. Krishna is a very practical person. He tells the highest, and then he says, you can't go to the highest, go step by step here. Right? Let me come here again. So, in this verse number 11, giving up the results of work, those who can do bhakti by both internal and external senses are most outstanding. But one may not be able to even work for Krishna because of all this family and religious considerations or other impediments. So for such people alone, Krishna advises them to sacrifice the results of their activities, if not fully, at least some percentage of the results. This is what Krishna is saying here. So let me go to this other slide here. So this is the gradation that we are seeing here. The highest is mind and intelligence fixed on Krishna. If not, Abhyasa Yoga. If not, do certain activities for Krishna's pleasure, like whatever we discussed, the worship of the deity, conducting festivals, making nice flower garlands. Like I know some of the devotees in this call, they come to the temple and make some flower garlands. Nice. And then if that is also not possible, renounce the fruit of work. And I'll come to the last two stages also. That's what Krishna also talks about. We'll come to that. These are all these ones which I have highlighted in yellow. Srila Prabhupada has actually given us all these things. He said, try for this, mind intelligence fixed on Krishna. But if this is not possible, he has given us this process of chanting 16 rounds every day, hearing the lectures on Krishna, and reading Krishna's books about Krishna every day. That is this Abhyasa Yoga that Srila Prabhupada has given. In the morning and in the evening, we can work on this part. Then activities for Krishna's pleasure. This corresponds to the work with doing arati for the deities, going to the temple and doing something for Krishna. And then when we go to do our work, we take some portion of our work, some percentage, we give it for the propagation of Krishna consciousness in the society. So Srila Prabhupada has given us this complete 4 steps for us here. And that's the brilliance of an Acharya, that he takes what is given in scriptures and brings it into the practical realm. So within ISKCON, this is what everybody is encouraged here. What we are not encouraged is this gray portion. And what is that? And so I'll come to that portion now. Oops, hide controls. Yeah. So, Mai eva mana adatsva, Mai buddhim niveshaya. Bhakti, or pure stage of love, offering one's mind and intelligence completely to Krishna. This is what Srila Prabhupada has said. And one of the acharyas in our lineage, he has also said something similar, offering one's full consciousness to Krishna with complete ease and steadiness. If this is not possible, next is Abhyasa Yoga or Sadhana Bhakti. And in Sadhana Bhakti, what we do? Whenever the mind wanders here and there, bring it back on Krishna. That is Sadhana Bhakti. Now, if one cannot do, work for Krishna by contributing to his service. Mat karma paramo bhava. That is verse number 10. And that's what we discussed here. Like you see here 2 pictures. This is a devotee by name Srinathji. He's no longer in this world. He had seen Srila Prabhupada, became very attracted to him. And he was a great industrialist. Some of you may be buying salt at home. I mean, not everybody buys salt at home, but some of you may be buying, at least those who are a little older. There is this salt brand called Akar or Apar, something like that. That was coming from his factory. So he was a very big industrialist, but he used to take all the money from it, and not all, a significant portion of it, and use it for propagation of Krishna consciousness, to help devotees, to help temple projects, to help in the distribution of books, etc. So he used to do that. So that is the working for contributing to Krishna. That is, and Sarva Karma Phalatyag. This is what I explained was the Karma Phalatyag. But he also used to come to the temple and clean the temple, do service in that altar, etc. So he used to do both, this item number 10 and 11. If one cannot do even this, then what happens? That is what Krishna tells in verse 12. Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasat. For those who cannot follow the principles of this Krishna consciousness, you cultivate jnana. What is this cultivation of jnana? That is focusing on Atma. Why? Because there are people who with baggage from this past births, where they cannot really have a relationship with Krishna. They cannot get appreciation for Krishna. They don't have attraction for chanting the holy name. They would rather say, I want to meditate. Come what may. Sorry, it just doesn't appeal to me. So Krishna says, is it so? Okay, you focus on the Atma. So what is the path of Jnana? The path of Jnana first says, Neti neti iti. I am not this, I am not that. I am Atma who's pure. The Paramatma comes next step. That will come there here. Jnana dhyanam vishishyate. Better than focusing on Jnana, that is the Atma, it is better to come to the Dhyana stage. Because in Dhyana stage, one gradually comes to focusing on the Paramatma. Better than this Dhyana stage is this Karma Phalatyag, which we just discussed now. Karma Phalatyag means giving up the result of our activities. So let me put it in this here. So if one cannot function in relationship with Krishna, come to the bottommost here, in the rung of the ladder, remembrance on Atma. If you cannot do remembrance on Atma, I mean, if you are getting bored with it, focus on the Paramatma. The dhyana, I should have written as dhyana on the Paramatma. Remembrance leads to steady focus on the Paramatma, and then comes to the result, pronounce the fruits of work. Because even here, the full satisfaction doesn't come. So these are also given as steps for us to just come to this yellow box of Bhakti Yoga. So Krishna is very kind. He knows there are individuals of having different proclivities, and accordingly he gives them different suggestions. There is no one size that fits all. And each of you here, we are all requested to be somewhere in this yellow box. And when you see others in this world, engage everybody in at least one or some of the steps of this world. When you engage others also in one or some of these steps of bhakti, then Krishna will become pleased. He will make you, in whichever step you are in, it becomes even more easier. The easiest way for each of us to progress is to help somebody else in this world also to progress in a compassionate manner. So I'll pause here for today. We discussed in the previous session, Klesho Adhikatara, how the path is very tough, but what is this path of Avyakta? Why is it that people get attracted to this path of Avyakta or unmanifest? We took the example of this Tattvamasi verse, that number one, the understanding is not right, but just like there are people in this world who like to enjoy matter, there are also people who like to enjoy the unmanifest aspect. It is present, but it is not the ultimate. And we saw examples of verses from scripture where it's clearly given that the best way to reach the completeness in our life is to render devotional service to Krishna. And then Krishna himself says, we heard Krishna's words from other scriptures, we heard Krishna's words in Bhagavad Gita, and then what if we cannot go to the highest level? What's the highest level? And if we cannot go to the highest level, what are the gradations? That we saw in this slide here. Now, having spoken about this, next is the qualities of a Bhakta. This we will cover in the following session. Any comments? Any thoughts? 724.
Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. First, there is one comment and then there is one question, Prabhu. So the comment is that you mentioned the renounced fruits of work. Means basically fruits of work is what we get, let's say salary or money. So we should actually use some portion of that.
No, not the salary money. Some people get fame. Some people get power. Some people get influence. Right? So like somebody may be an MLA or an MP. He gets power and influence. He can choose how the money of the people will be used. So that's also one result of our activities. Yes, please.
So if I stick to the money part for just to understand it, so it means that we should give this money for the Krishna conscious activities, whichever we should donate to whichever people are doing these Krishna conscious activities. But generally, the conception people think that the meaning of this particular thing, like karmanevadhikaraste mafaleshu, they think that we just mentally we should not attach to the result of what work. We should use it, but mentally we should be detached, not like giving to someone. That's what some understanding is there.
Yeah.
Prabhu, I have a question. I mean, last week also I had the same question. Can you go to those list of verses where in 12th chapter?
Okay.
Vedabase.
Vedabase. You want me to go there? Okay, I'll go there. Yes.
Yeah. So, text 3, 4, and 5. So in 3, 4, Krishna says that were those who fully worship the unmanifested, means the impersonal part, and finally he gives the line that he at last achieved me.
Perfect. Correct.
Okay.
Right.
So it means that whatever the I'll finish my question, Prabhu. So it means that whatever the Bhakti Yogi process, whatever the Gyan or whatever this impersonal way process, ultimately will achieve Krishna. The result is same. That's what the people say. And they come to the next verse, that those who are worshipping the manifested part, their path is very difficult. So what these people say, the Mayavadis or impersonalists, the people say that actually, okay, bhakti is fine, but it is for less intelligent people. It is for simple-minded people. We are doing tougher job. Then you ultimately will achieve whatever we have to achieve. Krishna has told in 3rd and 4th. So how do we take up that part? Because they said, say, we are superior to bhakti is for less intelligent people, for simple-minded people. It's easy process. We are doing something more difficult, and finally we are achieving the same goal. So what do we? What is our thought on this?
So even as per the impersonal path, without worshipping the Supreme Lord, he cannot come to the stage of focusing the mind on Brahman. Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhu. So far, okay?
Yes, I muted myself.
So what happens is bhakti is a concomitant thing even for somebody on the impersonal path. So bhakti alone is sufficient for the personal path, and bhakti is also required for somebody on the impersonal path. But all this focusing the mind on Brahman, see the Atma everywhere, see the world as unreal, and all the other items in red, these are all not required for a bhakta. Assimilate the Mahavakyas, abide in the awareness, this is not required. These are the tough things to do. So somebody chooses a tough thing to do, but if they neglect this important aspect here, maybe I should just put it in some color here. Yeah. Or something lighter color. Yeah. If one neglects this, worshipping the Supreme Lord, one cannot focus the mind on Brahman. So anybody on the path of impersonal realization cannot say that I cannot do bhakti. It is only for the less intelligent people. Even for him, the strength to come to the focusing the mind on Brahman also comes here. And then comes the other verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which says, you can try all of this, but finally you will come to the realization that the Supreme Lord is a person, that there is a distinction between the Atma and the Supreme Lord, that is the Brahman. They are similar in quality, but different in quantity. So it is like taking a roundabout route. That is what it is for them. The problem is they are not willing to see the scriptures holistically. They are cherry picking, like how in some of you come from the version control world of Git, and there is something called cherry picking. Likewise, in the English language, it comes from the American phrase cherry picking, that you have a farm full of cherries. There are good cherries and bad cherries. You take what you think are nice cherries and eat them and taste them. So in a similar way, those who focus on the impersonal truth are actually cherry picking statements from scriptures. And who doesn't do that? Everybody does that. Because we all are attached to our own conceptions. We all cherry pick whatever we like in this world. That's the problem here. So when Krishna says, like the point that you were mentioning here, when Krishna is saying everybody, they at last achieve me, it is out of Krishna's kindness that he brings about a devotee or a devotional scripture in the life of that person who is following the path of impersonalism, and makes them attracted to him further. Why? Because he followed a little bit of bhajana or devotional service he did, and Krishna manifests some things other in that person's life. So it is out of Krishna's kindness that they all achieve. It is not out of the validity of the process. It is out of the kindness of Krishna that they jump the ship of that impersonal process and come to the personal process. That is when they achieve. So it is in that sense, it is an indirect path, whereas the path of worship is a direct path.
Yes, very nice. Thank you.
Ashok Prabhu, would you have anything to say? You mentioned in the chat, Tattvamasi is written in the entrance of Shabarimala.
Yeah.
Would you like to say anything else?
No, not more. It is fixed on the entrance of Shabarimala. It is Tattvamasi in Malayalam and in Tamil.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you see, especially in Kerala, it's the birthplace of Kaladi, is the birthplace of, or the appearance place of Sripada
Shankaracharya.
And therefore the Kerala is a very stronghold of the impersonal understanding.
Yes.
And what we are speaking is something which is not exactly, it is exactly opposite to the impersonalism spoken by Sripada Shankaracharya. So here, the Vaishnava Acharyas are very clear that Sripada Shankaracharya gave a philosophy which was meant, like he himself is an amsha of Lord Shiva, and it is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. He, one of the greatest Vaishnavas is Shambhu. One has to be a Vaishnava like Lord Shiva. So, why is a Vaishnava a devotee of the Supreme Lord like Lord Shiva, and his partial expansion, that is Shankaracharya, speaking about something which is putting the Saguna Brahman, or the Lord with qualities and features, etc., at a lower pedestal than the Nirguna Brahman. In fact, it is said here, the path of impersonalism, there's a famous Acharya by the name of Vadiraja Tirtha. What happens in the path of impersonalism is, they say the scriptures, there are some statements which talk about Saguna Brahman, that is Brahman who has qualities, forms, pastimes, etc. And there is Nirguna Brahman who is an undifferentiated person. So between these two, what the path of impersonalism or Shankaracharya's path is, I will say the Saguna is lower and Nirguna is higher. So in response to such a kind of reaction to the scriptures, Vadiraja Tirtha says, assume there are two children. Two children are arguing with each other. So what does a parent, and say there is a parent who comes in between, says these two children are arguing with each other. And so they both are arguing for some item. And so one parent will come, he will kill one child, cut it to pieces, cook it, and give it to the other child and say, see, you won. You have subjugated the other. Now you are right. And you take it. Is this right?
No.
It's not right. And so Vadiraja Tirtha says, when the scriptures talk about two different aspects, what should be done is samanvaya. Samanvaya means how to reconcile both. It is not saying one is vyavaharika and the other is paramatmika. One is lower and another is higher is not the right approach. Rather, the right approach is how both of them are true. And that is why within Srila Prabhupada's treatment or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's treatment, etc., the consistent thing here is there is an aspect of impersonal realization of the absolute. There is an aspect of personal too. What Krishna prefers is this. That is given here. Not saying that one will, like in the path of impersonal realization, it so happens that one uses the Saguna Brahman, or one uses the God with names and forms, and finally says, they are all not real. They are unreal. It is required only at the beginning stage. It is like saying, I will take a ladder to climb up, and after taking the ladder to climb up, then we will just throw the ladder and say, no, I will not go down anyway. I don't need the ladder. So that is what the Saguna and the Nirguna Brahman concept related gradation as seen from the philosophy of Shankaracharya is. But instead, the Vaishnava understanding is, no, both exist. It is it is not like we neglect the Saguna at some point in time. The Nirguna also exists. The Nirguna exists particularly outside of the spiritual realm, and the Saguna exists within the spiritual realm. Now, we as individual jivas have to choose where we want to be. So we are not. This is where the samanvaya or the harmonization comes about. Is this okay, Ashok Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. But I think when Buddhism came,
yes,
all these things disappeared from India. Shankaracharya is reintroduced these four mathas and built the temple and all that.
Correct.
Then only it came back.
So actually, some people say that when Buddhism came into being, what Buddhism did is it took away the notion of God. It took away the notion of the validity of Vedic scriptures. Yes. So two things went away. God comes out, goes out of the picture. Everything comes from shunyata. I mean, there is nothingness was all that pervaded in this world. We all get back into nothingness, and there is no need of the Vedic scriptures. Two things came about. And then Sripada Shankaracharya, what he did, some people say that he, as his service to the Supreme Lord, he brought back the relevance of the Vedic scriptures.
Yes.
But the shunyata gets replaced by Brahman. But then the Vaishnava Acharyas came and they did it, they expanded it. In Kali Yuga, they brought back the relationship between the Brahman and the Jiva even more. So it's a step-by-step thing which some people claim.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to some other scholars, they will disagree for a different reason, because Buddhism, there are different Buddhas in this world. One is called Shakyamuni Buddha. The Buddha whom we have heard about, like the prince coming from, I forgot the name of the place, somewhere in Bihar, Nepal. That is one Buddha.
Gaya.
Gaya, he got enlightenment, but he appeared in, I'm forgetting the name of the place there. Anybody can tell me? Somewhere in Nepal or...
it's called Lumbini, Prabhuji.
Lumbini. Yes, we have Lumbini gardens here in Bangalore.
Yes.
Okay. So he appeared in Lumbini. That is one of the Buddhas, and there were several Buddhas prior to it. So this philosophy as such existed even during the time of Vyasa, so much so that there are certain sutras in the Brahma Sutra which are meant to put down the Buddhist view. So Veda Vyasa was in 3300 BC approximately, and he lived for some 300-400 years around that time. So approximately 3000 BC to 3300 BC. 3300 to 3600 BC, somewhere in that range. So these kind of philosophies existed before too, and it will continue right now because of different acharyas who have come. Gradually this Buddhism is losing vein in India as such, but if you see in the West, it's picking up like anything, because it's a materialistic philosophy. Buddhism is a materialistic philosophy where God doesn't come, and a philosophy where God is not present is a materialistic philosophy, and people are very much attracted to it. And how has it manifested today? There is this whole movement of be aware in the present now, and it's also called as the mindfulness movement. Many people say be mindful of what you are doing. It's great, it is a Vedic principle too, but mindfulness about what is the question. Mindfulness, they say, be aware of one's own action. Whereas what we learned in Bhagavad Gita today, Mai Mano Avishtya, that is, our mind has to be fixed on Krishna. But the Buddhism's mind is be aware of one's own self. So there is no God in the picture. So Buddhism is again becoming prevalent now. And since it is becoming prevalent, it is we who have been not at all qualified to receive this, the Jnana of Bhagavad Gita, but somehow we all have been given it. It is we who have to take this up further and give it to those Buddhist people. So when the people talk about mindfulness, we'll have to tell them mindfulness on what? We have to stir their thoughts. Otherwise, people will remain ignorant.
Yes, bro.
Any other comment? Harsha Prabhu, anything that you would like to say? Any difference here? Please, let it be a forum where we can discuss openly.
Yeah, not a comment as such. Again, like you rightfully said, I don't think I'm qualified enough, but somewhere this is the point of, is it, see, even we're calling Bhakti Yoga as, simple, but it is not simple, right? It's I understand we need to chant and all of that. It doesn't come that simplistically as well, right? In the sense, we keep saying in terms of once we kind of chant or anything of that sort, our mind will always try to remember Krishna or
Yes.
all of so
Yes.
again it's not simple. Are we oversimplifying things?
No,
Is sometimes
actually,
I feel.
actually, the word should have been used differently. The process of bhakti is simpler, but not simple.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's right. Yeah.
So actually, last week we went through this. Wait, let me come there. Here, where was it? Yeah. So I went through a set of verses from the Sadhana Panchakam showing how it is so tough to follow the path of impersonalism. But what about the path of bhakti? Steps. Let me steps. So there are steps here. One has to develop attachment to Sri Guru. One has to develop attachment to the mood of Vrindavan and the eternal residence of Vrindavan. One has to develop attachment to the devotees and the mantra. So what we just focused on so far was mantra.
Right.
There are these other steps too that we need to do. Then we need to infuse our activity with service to Radha and Krishna. And as we do this, we have to overcome lust, deceit, and prestige. And how do we overcome this? Whereas in the path of impersonalism, lust is overcome by having a strong conception that I am an Atma, I should not be overcome by seeing this beautiful pornographic picture, or I should not be overcome by this and that, etc. Here, we cry for the help of devotees. The path is different. And it so turns out that when we cry to devotees for help, they will plead to Krishna on our behalf, and suddenly the problem vanishes. But our effort is still there, that we cry and ask for help. So in that sense, it is simpler, but not simple. You're right, Rishabh Prabhu. Very well observed there. Any other thought or comment here?
So, Prabhu, one question from my side.
Yes, please tell, Prabhu.
So, shall we regard Saguna Bhakti or the personal Bhakti as a ladder which you said, which can be thrown away? So, the real nature of truth is Nirguna, or what is the real nature of truth then? Or it is neither of these two? Has anything been told about this by?
Yes, it is being said.
Yeah.
It is being said here. So let me go right away and show it here itself here. Or let me. It's easy to, yes, it's easy to say this way. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. Vadanti, it is said. Who says? They. Tat tattva vidas. Who are those? The learned souls. Tattva, those who know the tattva properly. Tattvam, that's the absolute truth, is having brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. They know this absolute truth has this Brahman aspect, Paramatma aspect, and Bhagavan aspect. All these three aspects are present. It is not that one, the notion of Saguna and Nirguna Brahman, which was given by Shankaracharya, is Saguna is unreal, Nirguna is real. Whereas the Bhagavatam's viewpoint is the Nirguna Brahman is what is called by just by the notion of Brahman. It exists. In addition to it, there is something called Paramatma. Within our heart, there is the Supreme Lord present as the Paramatma. And then in the spiritual world, and also when at times he comes to the material world as Bhagavan. So all these three exist. The Jiva is fully satisfied with the Bhagavan feature of the Supreme Lord. He is partially satisfied with Brahman, a little more so with Paramatma, but fully with Bhagavan. It is not that like throwing away the ladder. After reaching Bhagavan, Brahman doesn't exist. No. The Brahman aspect of the Supreme Lord is where by his energy, he is present everywhere in this material world. And there is also a place called the Mahakalapur, where one can experience the Sat feature of the Supreme Lord. In Brahman, one can express, when one realizes this Brahman feature, one experiences Sat, eternity, which means I am no longer under the control of what will happen to me in future. Am I going to lose something? When currently we are all in an embodied state. I may have a job tomorrow, I may not have a job tomorrow. I may have food today, I may not have food tomorrow. These things plague us because we are conditioned by our embodied nature. But when one realizes the Brahman nature, this Sat feature will make us know very clearly, I am eternal. It is not that I need food to live. The Atma doesn't need food to live. So that is what one experiences in the Brahman aspect. In the Paramatma aspect, one experiences the Sat and the Chit, the cognizance aspect all the more. It is not that the Chit factor is not present in Brahman aspect, but it comes to completion. It comes more so in the Paramatma aspect. Chit means one is aware of the interrelationship between the Supreme Lord and the Jivas and the world around us. The Bhagavan, Jiva, and the Jada matter. That Sat and Chit aspect is there in Paramatma. And in Bhagavan, the Sat, Chit, and Ananda aspect are present. So the throwing of the ladder is an incorrect understanding there. Whereas the Bhagavatam, which is the what you call the ripened fruit of the Vedic literature, says all three exist. And you please come to, because we are Satchidananda Rupa. We ourselves are Satchidananda Rupa. Until we come to Bhagavan, we'll be unhappy. We have to realize our full Satchit and Ananda. And that can happen only when we are in relationship to Bhagavan, who is the reservoir of infinite Sat, Chit, and Ananda. That is the understanding of the scriptures, Saurabh Prabhu. Does it help, or am I not clear on something? You can please tell that and I'll see if I can elaborate, if at all Krishna gives me the understanding.
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah, thank you.
Any other thought or comment?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mati.
First of all, thank you so much, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. It was a wonderful explanation of personalism and personalism. And I just want to know about the name called Kaivalyartham. Is that same as of like only considered with our own Atma, and
yes,
does it reach that abode? Like it goes to the Vishnu Loka?
No, the word Kaivalya in general denotes the Brahman realization.
Okay.
And there is a very famous word that a devotee feels Kaivalyam Narakayate. For a devotee, just going to this Brahman aspect where there is no aspect of service to Bhagavan is like Naraka. You know, like suppose like we all know in Corona times that we all had to just be in lockdown, be at home, not meet our friends and relatives, etc. We feel like this is hell for us. I mean, there are so many cases of mental depression and things like that during this COVID times. Like that, a devotee feels Kaivalyam, where one does not have a relationship with Bhagavan and his other associates, eternal associates, the spiritual master, etc., is Naraka. And therefore, one doesn't stay in the Brahman stage completely. A devotee will get access to the Brahman platform, but he doesn't want to stay there. He wants to get the fullness here in Bhagavan stage.
So the devotee, when he reaches to that loka, and even the Brahman, those who impersonalists, they also go to that place, no? Like they will not come down, right? They say that they enjoy their own Atma and be in that world.
No, they cannot, because they are devoid of relationship with the absolute truth, and because they do not have access to the Ananda aspect. So the soul has Satchit Ananda. It wants to experience Ananda. In fact, even why do we go to a nice restaurant and eat, some nice food and etc.? We want to experience Ananda. The only aspect here is Ananda is not something to come from outside. It is something to be had by the relationship of the Atma with the Supreme Lord. But in the Brahman feature, when one does realize the Brahman aspect through the impersonal path, one is not getting access to the Ananda feature of the Bhagavan. That makes that path incomplete. And because of that incomplete path, the soul there has two options: either to seek out for help, and in that case, you may have some of the great devotees like Lord Shiva or even Sanat Kumar, Sanatana Kumar, etc. They understand what it means to be on the Brahman platform. They will help a devotee to go to the next stage. For example, there is the form of the Supreme of Lord Shiva as Dakshinamurti. What does Dakshinamurti do? He is teaching some great sages who have come to the platform of Brahman's realization how to come to the stage of Bhagavan. So Lord Shiva is also doing that great service. He's the greatest of the Vaishnavas. So they will become dissatisfied. Anybody who has access only to the Brahman stage will become dissatisfied. Either they have to be guided by somebody like Lord Shiva or the four Kumaras or other devotees to come to the Bhagavan stage, or else they will fall down in the sense they will feel dissatisfaction and they will engage more so in worldly, altruistic, philanthropic activities, opening hospitals, building roads, and this, that, etc. Because they are looking for happiness with other living entities, which they are not able to get in this Brahman stage. So, according to Baladev Vidya Bhushan, mostly those who come to this Brahman stage here, it is like a stepping stone for them. They go to the next step by dint of the mercy of the Supreme Lord, if they have followed a Vedic process. Because in that Vedic process, like what Shankaracharya said, there was some devotion to the Supreme Lord. That practice was done. Because of that practice, it becomes easier for them to go to Bhagavan. Okay. Is that okay, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. And one more question.
Yes, Mataji.
Shankaracharya's followers are called Shaivites, right?
No, not at all.
Okay, so I want to know more about that.
See, Shankaracharya, the Shaivites are a little different. What language do you speak at home, Mataji? Tamil, okay. Have you heard of somebody called as the Nayanmars?
Yes.
The Nayanmars are the Shaivites. Okay. So, the Shaivites in the Vedic literature, they're also called as the Pashupatas. The difference is, according to Shaivites, there are different varieties of Shaivites. Some are called the Kashmiri Shaivites. Then there are the Nayanmars, and then there are the Pashupatas. I mean, there are some 5 to 6 varieties. I only know 3 of them. I don't know all of them. Each of these Shaivites have different notions. One group of Shaivites have it that ultimately Lord Shiva is the absolute truth. He is a person. One cannot become one with Lord Shiva, but one has to serve Lord Shiva. That is one group of Shaivites. Then we have these Nayanmars and others who, some of them have written their hymns, like it's called the Devaram in the Tamil. And they want to become one with Lord Shiva. So especially in Kashmiri Shaivism, they want to become one with Lord Shiva. Sripada Shankaracharya did not have this notion of either in his ultimate exposition in the Brahma Sutras. It is not about Lord Shiva being the absolute truth. It is, there is Brahman who without any forms, etc., to whom he says it as the absolute truth. But he has also given some other verses where he, following the Vedic dictum, he says Vishnu is the absolute truth. He worships the deity of Sharada, he worships the deity of Lord Shiva, but he has very clearly given Lord Vishnu is the absolute truth, especially in his first line of his commentary to the Bhagavad Gita. So people commonly think that the followers of Shankaracharya, they wear this, they put the vibhuti or ash, the holy ash, horizontally. The Shaivites also put it horizontally, and therefore the followers of Shankaracharya are Shaivites. That is an incorrect understanding. Both the Shaivites and the followers of Shankaracharya are actually called Smarthas, because they say we give value to the Smritis, the Shrutis and the Smritis, etc. That is one definition. And the other definition is Samana Arthaha. They give equal value to each of the different devatas. So Sripada Adi Shankaracharya actually reinstituted a system of worship called Panchopasana worship. In the Panchopasana worship, one worships Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Surya Dev, Parvati Devi, and one more. I'm forgetting that. So Shankaracharya's path for the people of this world was Panchopasana. Those who can go beyond after the path of bhakti, etc., for them it is the Nirguna Brahman. So that is the path he had given. It was not the path of worshipping Lord Shiva as the absolute truth. Is that okay, Mataji?
Okay. And what about this Ganapatiyam and Kaumaram and all those things? Do they realize Brahman?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. What is
there are so many sectors like they say in a Ganapatiyam who worship Lord Ganapati and Kaumaram who those categories they are only deity worshippers, or they worship the Ganapati itself as Brahman?
No, so it is not just in the several verses that we in the previous chapters that we discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna clearly mentioned that the worshippers of the demigods go to the realm of the demigods. My worshippers come to me. And so these demigods are also great devotees of the Supreme Lord. When their worshippers go to their realms, then they will teach them how they can become good bhaktas of the Supreme Lord. So it is an indirect path. It is not recommended to go on that indirect path, especially in Kali Yuga. Why? Because by going in an indirect path, it is not that we are going to be so fixed in our devotion to Lord Ganapati or Muruga or Kumara, etc. We are not fixed in our devotion. We still have our aspirations and desires to enjoy this material world. So it is not that because we still harbor those aspirations, we'll most likely born in this material world. But on the other hand, if one has a little devotion to Krishna, Krishna personally takes care of the fact that even if if I'm not perfect in my sadhana, he will ensure that even in the next life, I will get somebody who can take me further to him. That is the advantage of Krishna Bhakti. That we need not be perfect. We may not reach perfection now, but it is a step-by-step progress. Whereas when going to worship of the other devatas, it is not necessarily a step-by-step progress. It is up and down. It's like one step up, two step down, like that.
Okay. Yes, Prabhuji, very clear. Thank you.
Any other comments or thoughts? Nandini Mitra Mataji, would you want to say anything?
No, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Okay. And Pushpa Mataji? Nothing from you?
No, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Everything was very clear. Very nice.
Prabhu, Saurabh here again. One question.
Please do.
So there is a way, I mean, normally most of us worship, like depending on the occasion, we put one deity on pedestal or, on the higher worship. Like if it is Ganapati Puja, we worship Ganapati. When it comes to some Vidyarambham or Saraswati, Saraswati. So, and then on Krishna Janmashtami or some other occasion, we worship Krishna also. So, I mean, what they call philosophically that we follow Henothism, right? So, yes. I mean, what is wrong with that?
No, okay. See, the question, the thing here is, it is like on my birthday, I am at the center, but ultimately, the consciousness that we have to check here is, am I saying Saraswati is the ultimate principle here? I mean, when we are okay, let me go step by step. When we are worshipping, on what basis are we worshipping? We are worshipping on the basis of the Vedic scriptures. So the first question that we should ask is, how do the Vedic scriptures ask us to worship them? The Vedic scriptures ask us to give them respect, to be thankful to them. But it is not like saying Chaparasi is equal to the CEO of the company or the vice president is equal to the CEO of the company. We should know the relative positions of each of them. So the mistake that happens here is, if we make them equal, like say, for example, when Krishna has clearly stated until 12th chapter that he is the source of everything, all the devatas depend on him. If we take that portion out and just have the worship of the devatas on an equal pedestal to Krishna, then we are acting in ignorance. And so what happens? Our path to realizing our spiritual nature is getting impeded there. So, because we are not developing a unified relationship with the Absolute Truth. And why do we do so? We do so because we feel, if this day I don't make Saraswati to be the highest, maybe she'll become angry with me. So we project our thoughts onto the devatas. In our world, in my birthday, I want to be at the center of attraction. Therefore, the devatas are also like me, which is on their birthday or their holy days or some tithi for them, they have to be at the center. But is that what they want? Is it how they want to be worshipped? No. These devatas are all subservient to Krishna. When we serve Krishna, they are automatically happy. On their special days, we can give them, thank them with some additional prayers. But if we don't please the Supreme Lord, they themselves are not happy. So when we should worship them the way they want to be worshipped, not the way we want them to be worshipped. That is the problem here. We project our insecurities onto the devatas, which is not true. The devatas are in that position because they are beyond those kind of insecurities. They are established in their, in their faith in Krishna. And that is why they have been brought as devatas. If somebody doesn't have faith in Krishna, they cannot come to the stage of becoming a devata at all. In fact, if you practice bhakti properly, and you still have a wish that, I still like to create certain things. I like to, like put like Lego games, put things together and see some things manifesting. You may become Lord Brahma. So, as long as to the extent that we are not ready to do anything that Krishna wants, but I want my thing to be done, then Krishna will give us opportunity, and we may become devatas too. Any thoughts on this, Saurabh Prabhu? You may not agree to it. You can tell how you don't agree, and we can take this discussion further here, Prabhu.
No, it's not about that. I mean, I'm just thinking that maybe it's like worshipping different aspects of same supreme reality on different occasions. So it's not like we are not worshipping the same supreme, but we are focusing on a particular aspect on a particular occasion.
Focusing on an aspect is great. Focusing on aspect is fine. But with the complete understanding that, like say on Ganesh Chaturthi, it is not that Lord Ganesh is the Supreme Lord. He has an aspect of wanting to bless devotees who have obstacles in their life. And it is said in our scriptures that whatever obstacles can be removed by Lord Ganesha, he can remove all the mundane obstacles in our life. But the Sri Guru, the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, etc., they do that very same functioning for us. So when we worship the Guru Parampara every day, all the obstacles in our spiritual life are being taken away by these devatas. So that in that sense, the aspect of removing obstacles is equivalently being done by worshipping the Guru. And ideally, we don't need anybody else. So we are not disrespectful, but in the path of spirituality, there is room for variety, but variety with the understanding of hierarchy is important. When variety obliterates hierarchy, that becomes acting in ignorance, and that doesn't help us to move further. So let's have variety, but with the proper understanding of hierarchy.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. For example, in one of your first stanza, you have Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani, Pracharani. So you are paying respect to Saraswati Devi despite of.
Oh, okay. You know what? No, nice thing that you brought it up. Here, the Namaste Saraswati Devi, it is not Saraswati, it is Saraswati Devi. And in this verse, the Saraswati refers to the disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. So in that sense, the word Saraswati comes. It's not for Saraswati Devi, but for Srila Prabhupada is being called as Saraswata, one who's a disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. That's where it is called. In fact, for a long time, even I was thinking in the same way until I read the translation.
Oh, that's very good to clarify. Thank you. Yeah, it was unclear to me also.
So, Namaste Saraswati Deve obeisances unto the disciple of Saraswati, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Gauravani Pracharine, one who propagated the teachings of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, Nirvishesha or impersonalism, Shunyavada, voidism, one who argued strongly against it, Paschatya Deshatarine. For removing these two, he went to the Western Loka, or the Western countries, Paschatya Deshatarine. That's one verse for Srila Prabhupada. And so, maybe just to conclude, we as followers of Srila Prabhupada, when we speak about it, this impersonalism, etc., it is not like we like impersonalism bashing or things like that. It is because our Guru, Srila Prabhupada, our Parama Guru Srila Prabhupada and his other disciples, they are very much aggrieved that people are missing out something like the personal aspect of the Supreme Lord. So when we speak about don't go to the impersonal and quote the scriptures, etc., our mood has to be that we are doing a service to Srila Prabhupada. He has a deeper understanding of it, but we are trying to please him. And by pleasing him, everything else will come in our life. Okay. Okay, I think it's 8:10, long time. Next week we'll conclude with the qualities of a Bhakta, and we'll have some pastimes associated with these qualities to know better how these qualities come in the life of a devotee, and how we can appreciate devotees with those qualities here. Okay, we'll end here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.